Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. This is Critic Box, and I am your host, Ben Walsh. With Christmas just around the corner, we are going to have a look at the latest Christmas movie installment to hit the big screen. Violent Night brings David Harbour back to the big screen, and he plays Santa Claus. Of course, as you probably guessed it, he plays a completely out in left field Santa Claus who is a down and out, absolute booze bag who lacks any typical human hygiene known to man. But before we really get into this movie, we are going to dive into what the world's critics have to say about A Violent Night. Okay, so starting us off, we have a bad review, and this is Gayle Sequeira from the film Companion. In trying to split the difference between slay and slay, the film falters. Its camp zoom-ins of characters delivering silly lines with great dramatic flair is undercut by its cheesiness, terribly earnest speeches about the meaning of Christmas. And I gotta say, I agree with this. This is a bad review, but it was almost like with this movie, you had not enough butter spread over a lot of toast. There was just a lot of talk and dialogue that really didn't go anywhere. And within that dialogue, there were a lot of cheesy lines, kind of overused lines that you've heard. I feel like they stole some stuff from Christmas Vacation. Chevy Chase might be filing a lawsuit here. But again, I think it was really between the lack of action or blood and guts that the film kind of marketed. It was a lot of cheesy, kind of typical Christmas jokes that you normally see or have already seen in a lot of the Christmas movies. So, agree with Gayle on this one. The film definitely falters in any of its dramatic flair, and then, of course, the dialogue and any type of comedy within this movie really is lacking and trying too hard, in my opinion. Okay, so we're moving on to a good review. We have Kevin Maher from the UK Times, a top critic. Die Hard meets Miracle on 34th Street. That's it. That's the pitch. And most of his blood-soaked action comedy neatly fulfills those expectations. So I guess I can kind of see how this is Die Hard. You have David Harbour filling in for Bruce Willis, coming in and trying to save the rich family from the mercenaries trying to steal their money. It is a hostage situation similar to Die Hard. But he says that there's a lot of blood-soaked action comedy. There wasn't. And that's what I go back to, the little, not enough butter over toast. There wasn't a whole lot of action in this movie. Blood and guts. It was a lot of dialogue between Santa Claus and the little girl that just kind of almost made me fall asleep. And the saving grace would have been the blood and guts, and there really wasn't a whole lot until the end. So yeah, this is a good review, 3 out of 5. But I think it's kind of a joke to compare Die Hard, which is an absolute classic, to this movie. It doesn't even come close, not even in the same ballpark. So moving on, we have a bad review from Kyle Smith, the Wall Street Journal, a top critic. This one gets bogged down with people sitting around talking, and when we finally reach a series of climatic confrontations, they're lazily written and thoughtlessly staged. Honestly, Kyle Smith summed it up perfectly right there. There's a lot of sitting around and talking, which is super disappointing if you've seen the trailer, because all the trailer really has is blood and guts and action and kind of the funniest scenes and the best scenes you pretty much get in the trailer. So yeah, and even when we do get to those action scenes, I feel like I've seen it before. I feel like I had seen, they have a snowmobile chase scene. It felt like I was watching a James Bond movie, but like way less quality in the chase scenes. And anyways, yeah, so Kyle really hits the nail on the head here. There's a lot of anticlimactic parts in the end, but again, there's a lot of sitting around in the movie, and the characters that are sitting around are definitely not the type of characters that can fill the void when you have those types of scenes. Okay, so moving on, we have a bad review. Radheyan Simonpillai from the Globe and Mail. He's a top critic, and he says, a witless movie that is too easily satisfied with its own premise and often feels like it's elbowing you in the ribs trying to get you to laugh along with it. And there you go. That's pretty much how I would explain this movie. This movie tries really hard to make you laugh and just does not do it. I think the biggest culprit or violator of this is John Leguizamo. He does not play a good villain, or at least a main villain. He's played villains in the past, but kind of just like that evil henchman to go along with the main boss villain. But John really, every time he was on the screen, I just couldn't wait for the scene to switch. He was terrible in this movie. I just wasn't buying it. I think with David Harbour's comedy, I've seen it before in Stranger Things. I've seen it in Hellboy. Any type of movie that David Harbour has played, he's kind of reused all the, like I said, the binge drinking, lack of hygiene type of character that you've seen with previous David Harbour films or TV shows. So again, I think a lot of this stuff was reused, or it was just reaching too hard to make the audience laugh. So yeah, again, agree with Radheyan on this one. Definitely really trying too hard, and elbowing you in the ribs is a really good description of what this movie does. Okay, we're going to move on to one final good review, and this is from A.A. Dowd of the Chron, top critic. What a boon to larger-than-life Hollywood action figure Harbour is. True. We take him seriously even when swaddled in the red of a Hellboy, a washed-up super spy, or a hammer-swinging Kris Kringle. So I think it's safe to say that David Harbour does carry this movie, but it's a lot of weight on this guy's shoulder. I think the script itself was pretty crappy. The editing and it just seemed like you were waiting for something to happen. You were waiting for more blood and guts. You were waiting for more comedy, and just like in the scenes where they could have really hit the nail on the head with the comedy, it just sucked. Like the characters that they wrote were awful, and it was really struggling to balance between, your typical, as you go into this movie and you see the trailer, okay, so we have a holiday season movie, a Christmas movie, but it's gonna have a blood and guts kind of slasher take on it. So you're hoping that you get a good mix of two. But I think that the writers and the director really struggled with that balance between the two. So yeah, Harbour is pretty much the centerpiece of this movie. And it is, the one thing I will say is they had a really cool take on Kris Kringle, Santa Claus. They kind of dived into this Norse Viking background of Kris Kringle. And I didn't know that, but I think it seems like the legend of Santa Claus comes from the Viking era. So he has this kind of hammer that he used to use back in war. They have scenes of Santa Claus in war in Vikings times, and I think that part was really cool. But there's not much. It doesn't take a big portion of the film up. It might be a minute or two of him kind of reliving or remembering what he went through back in those times. So that was probably the only bright spot I would say in this David Harbour's character of Santa Claus, because like I said before, it's basically Jim Hopper from Stranger Things playing Santa Claus in this movie. So yeah, that was a good review from A.A. Dowd. Okay, so now you've seen what the world's critics have had to say about Violent Night, and we are going to give you a bit of a recap and let you know if this movie is worth your time. Overall, I would say this movie really misses the mark. It markets itself as a typical outside of the box take on a traditional movie, and you really did not see what it promised. It marketed itself in the trailers and in news headlines as a blood and guts with gut-busting comedy type of film, and you didn't see that. Not only this, it's almost 2 hours. And I used the analogy before, but the best way to describe this movie is having not enough butter on too much toast. One side of the toast has no butter on at all, and that's the start of this film. A lot of sitting around and talking by characters that really cannot fill that void. And then you have to wait almost an hour and a half until you get into that blood and guts, and there is some comedy finally built in at the end, but you're sitting there for an hour and a half, and even the Christmas, feel good portions of the film that you would get out of A Christmas Story or Home Alone or any of those types of movies where you really get in the Christmas spirit, they weren't that good. Like, I didn't feel like I was amped up for Christmas, which again, that the writers and the producers and the director promised. So I would say overall, this movie missed on multiple accounts. It missed on the violence and the blood and guts take on Christmas. It absolutely swung out and missed on the comedy. And even the Christmas aspects of the movie were all not that good. So overall, I would say this movie is not worth your time, folks. Even if it comes up on Netflix, I mean, sure, it sucks because I really like David Harbour, but he brings the same character, rinse and repeat, that you've seen in Stranger Things with the policeman Jim Hopper, and then also with Hellboy even. It's the same kind of like down and out guy who enjoys his beverages and lacks human hygiene. Like, it's just the same type of character you've seen from David Harbour, but just wearing the Santa Claus suit. So overall, again, maybe avoid this one. And it's unfortunate because we definitely need some reprieve from all the reruns of the Christmas movies. Although I do enjoy reruns, but it would be nice to add to the collection. And unfortunately, I just don't think Violent Night does that for us. So yeah, that's about it, folks. Sorry that it's not good news on Violent Night, but the movies are going to keep coming. We're going to keep doing this thing. And again, our goal is to make sure that we make the most use of your time. We don't want you guys going to waste an hour, like an hour and a half, 2 hours here in this case, go see some crappy movie. Don't worry, I'll do that for you. But again, that's it. That's all we want to do here. If you like the video, please like it if you don't mind, and subscribe to our channel. Really much appreciated. We're really trying to drive the message home that we, the audiences, you and I, are the most important people in the film industry. And that's what we're all about here at Critic Box. So with that being said, take care, have a nice day, and be kind.